Welcome to Ducks and Pucks. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones. We got a great week of games to go over. The Ducks won the week, as Boudreau likes to, aim for. Three straight wins in this week. Actually, four counting the Minnesota game, but the three that we'll recap. And we got some games to look at coming up here on the East Coast. A tough trip coming up. And we've got a lot of news to cover, some questions about the goalies, the playoffs, the lineups, some injury news and some updates for you as well, and some updates on the website and blog at the very end we'll give to you. But first up, let's get to the Nashville game, Eddie. Back then, all the way back on Sunday there when we played, it was the battle for first in the Western Conference again after playing them before. And after kind of a iffy second period again, the Ducks came through and beat Nashville.
Yeah, and we've seen that all season really. A pretty decent first period, and then the sketchy, mysterious second period that nobody seems to be able to explain, where the Ducks fall asleep and get outshot by a ridiculous margin, and usually concede two or three goals, and then somehow we come back in the third period and flip the script and outshoot them 15-4. And with Taylor Beck getting that goal early in the second period, everybody knew it was coming, and then Roman Josi about 5 minutes later getting the power play goal. Entering the third, everybody's got that same feeling again. Is this second period going to cost us the game? And more often than not, it actually doesn't, which is surprising enough with the Ducks' record after trailing after two. 11-20, which isn't too bad considering it's first in the NHL, and trailing after two most of the time you'd expect to lose the game 90% of the time. But Getzlaf getting on the board early was important, and then Palmieri and Thompson scoring two quick goals and really got everybody excited, and then Fowler sealing the deal on the power play.
Yeah, you talk about the two quick goals. I was joking around with Phil Hewitt about that. I was like, "Hey, Phil, Palmieri scored, and you got to get that out quicker." I mean, Thompson scored, 35 seconds right after. So Phil and I had a laugh about that. That was an amazing stretch right there, and I think the momentum right there pretty much took the wind out of the sails for Nashville. The two quick goals, because the Ducks really came out on fire in that third period. Took it to Nashville, like you were talking about, 15 shots to 4, kind of went reverse of that terrible second period. And, we beat Nashville again, just like when we were tied with them last time. Good win overall. The Ducks played well, did a lot better in the faceoffs. The Ducks won 41 faceoffs in this game, so that was impressive. They got a power play goal as well. Basically did all the right things we talked about, Eddie, despite the off second period.
Yeah, and Gibson having a really good game in net as well, and anytime you can put four past Rene, and we've seen to play pretty well against him this season. He's been pretty much unstoppable, but we've been very good against the Predators when we've played them, and then also just seeing production from three lines: Getzlaf, Perry, and Maroon, combining for the first goal. Palmieri getting on his line on the board in the second goal, and then Thompson and Silverberg getting on the board for the third goal. So it's a lot of offense from everywhere up the lineup, and then getting that power play goal from Cam Fowler was also good to see as well. So just production from up and down the lineup, and then Gibson having a strong game, and if we can close down these mysterious second periods, I think we'd be good to go. Obviously, it's been a problem all season, and nobody seems to know why. We've heard it from, almost everywhere. I've even heard it up here on Sportsnet, when the Ducks are on, and nobody can really understand what's going on. We just kind of fall asleep. But hey, if we come out and get a win, I'm not going to complain too much.
Yeah, agreed, Eddie. We've talked about this at length, and a lot of people ask questions about the second period and what's going on. I think a lot of it, is just they come out in the first period, and whatever the situation is, we end up, tied or ahead or behind. And the games are pretty close after the first period. I think the second period, it's just the mindset of going out there and taking it to the other team. It seems like the Ducks wait till the third period to do that. So maybe it's something they got to adjust there. Fortunately, in the two other games against the Kings and Colorado, the second periods weren't too bad for them. They got down early in that game against the Kings. We talked about Jeff Carter in the game preview and the game, how he's played against the Ducks, and he got that power play goal. And that was kind of after Brown had hit Perry down, and then kind of the melee with Stoner and Dupree. I mean, I was happy to see obviously the players step up for Perry. It just was unfortunate because with Dupree coming in there a little bit later, the Kings got the power play and made us pay early in this one.
Yeah, and you never want to get down, especially against a good team like the Kings. But the Ducks, you never seem to see any quit when they're down. Maybe like we just mentioned, you see some quit in the second period usually, but they always seem to fight to the end. And obviously we saw that early in the after pretty even second period, nothing really going on, and then the third period, getting that early goal from Patrick Maroon, I think was key, with Getzlaf, and Wisniewski getting another assist, added to his pretty good start, I guess, for since joining the Ducks. And then Silfverberg getting that arguably controversial goal we'll talk about in a bit, about midway through the period, and then we're thinking we have it going, and 4 minutes left, Justin Williams squeaks a rough one by John Gibson, which I'm sure he'd love to have back, but you can't blame him on that. He had a great game, and then obviously Kessler walking out and roofing in an OT, and he was one guy we expected to step up in this game, and he definitely did an OT.
Yeah, we talked about Kessler and him playing against the Kings. Now 5 goals and 2 assists in 5 games against the Kings. I mean, he just, the fans have dubbed him the Kingslayer, is what a lot of them were saying on social media after the game. And, I'm not going to disagree with that. I mean, he's gone out there and really taken it to him. He was one of the ones that we said, hey, he's going to, put some points on the board. And, he made it count, especially with that goal being his 200th career goal. So, that was a memorable one for him, especially playing, the Kings going back to his Vancouver days. They had some nasty playoff games, run-ins and stuff, Eddie.
Yeah, and I think we did a lot of things right. Obviously, the third period was a little bit scary to watch, and the Kings getting 17 shots in that period. Gibson, really keeping us in, and a strong game for him after coming off Nashville and playing really well too. So a big game for him. And then you look at the face-offs, and something we talked about at length last year in the playoffs and in the offseason, because in the offseason, what else did we really have to talk about other than losing to the Kings? And then it dominated them in the face-offs, 36-22, and having everybody above 50%, and Thompson being 11 for 12 on the night was, great to see, especially since that was one of the main problems last year.
Yeah, the face-offs, we talked about that was the key, and that was what we had discussed. In the series last year, the Ducks had lost about 48 face-offs more to the Kings in that series, and coming out in this game and taking it to them, almost winning by a 2-1 margin was key in this one. Also dropping more hits. The only real downside this game was we didn't come through on the power play, which I think that's going to get even better. We didn't see Vatanen come back in this game. They held him out, and we'll talk about it. He comes back in the Colorado game, but getting him back and getting the first and 2 units is definitely going to help. And what did you think about that controversial goal? A lot of people on social media hit us up. Usually we don't get too many fans from other teams, but when we play the Kings, we usually get some trash talk from obviously their fans. What did you see on that goal?
Well, we see what we always see when Quick gets a little bumpy. His temper goes off, and he complains the ref, pushes the net off, and everything kind of just has a little bit of a tantrum. I'm obviously a little biased. I'm a Ducks fan, and but to being fair, that goal was not goalie interference. We've seen a lot of calls this season that have gone, that would have been no goal. And that would have been obviously a bad call. And we'll talk about that a little bit more with some of the rule changes coming up as well. But I think it was a fair goal. Thompson was outside the blue paint. We didn't really touch him. Quick tried to sell it a bit, and then Silfverberg puts it away. I don't see enough contact to call it goalie interference, and I think it's just a product of Quick's tantrum, and that made it seem more worse than it actually was.
Yeah, I agree, Eddie, and that's you and I review these goals just so everybody knows. We look on the Ducks website and other NHL and the other media sites. I always check, especially goals of this nature, because I want to see, just like when we talked about the Vancouver no goal that we had, the last time we played them last week, and we went into depth about that. And in this one, it was the same case. If you look at the overhead, is the one that really gives you the view. Thompson ends up, charging the net and setting up a good screen, which is what we said needed to be done. And basically, Quick goes to give him a jab with the blocker, and distracts Quick enough to where he does that. And as he slides across, the puck's past him. So it's on Quick on that play. He just didn't make the right decision. He tried to get Thompson out of his way instead of watching the puck. So it was fortunate for us. And the tantrum thing. I mean, I don't like to see that, to tell you the truth, and it's anybody. I mean, I don't like to see when Getzlaf gets mad and throws a stick and gets a penalty. But I think with one thing that the Kings got lucky there is Quick could have got 2 more minutes, Eddie, pushing that net off like that, and you could tell he dropped the F-bomb with the helmet nod there too. They kind of got fortunate that they didn't get another penalty on that.
Yeah, and you see that a lot from Quick. We saw that in the game the other day, against Vancouver, where he gets bumped and automatically he's right in there, fighting with his teammates. And I think that's just the style the LA Kings play. And I don't want to say it's dirty because it's not. He's not doing anything dirty, but he has a tantrum, and he's a great goaltender. But I think you look at the best goalies in the league, and the best goalie in the league, arguably this season is Carey Price, and he's never rattled. You never see him doing anything that you'll see him get mad if he gets bumped, but not even close to the same level that Quick does. And I think that's what's he's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. I can't fault him for anything really. But I think the tantrum is the only thing that is an issue with him, and I'm glad we don't have to see that from our 2 goalies.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody talks about Gibson being cool as a cucumber, and Freddie's the same way. I mean, I'm glad we have both of them, solid in there, and you don't see him get upset. I mean, you look at that goal that Gibson gave up, which maybe he could have stopped it and whatnot, but he didn't get upset or anything. He stayed focused, kept the Ducks in it, and we went to overtime and won it. And that's what you need back there. You need that cool calmness, and we'll talk about more of that too as we talk. We had a lot of questions about starting goalies, and we did a poll question, so we'll get more to that. But going forward past this game, we go to Colorado, and Gibson had started 4 in a row, and we see Andersen come into this game, play well, and the Ducks get the overtime win. What did you see from this game, Eddie, from the Ducks standpoint?
I think overall it was a really good game, a pretty dominant game offensively. I think this game could have got out of hand easily. We could have won, 5-6-2 if we capitalized on the rebounds that Varlamov was giving up. Colorado, they give up a lot of chances. I think they're averaging about 33 shots per game, and obviously we were over that with 40 in this game. And 2 periods where we just dominated them in shots, 14-7 in the first and 13-5 in the third. It was a game that we could easily won. We got a little bit out of hand. Sekach coming off the scratch in LA and getting his first goal. I know, everybody, all the fans were happy, and definitely us in the DucksNPucks Twitter chat where everybody really happy there. We're all big fans of Sekach coming to the team, and everything was looking good. Pretty strong second period. A good mix after having the really bad one in Nashville, having 2 straight games with a good second period is nice to see. But then Joe McGinley, 5 minutes in, getting a goal past Andersen, and then our power play was struggling this game and continued to struggle. And Ryan O'Reilly got that short-handed goal off a mistake at the blue line, and lucky for us, that line comes up again, and Raquel gets his goal, and the comeback kids, as the Anaheim Ducks account tweeted out a little bit too early. Raquel came back and got the goal, and then obviously, Perry gets the breakaway goal.
Yeah, we talked about the lineups too. That Raquel, Edem, Sekach line was the line that we were big on, as far as our staff talking about. And in this one, it was Fleshman, Sekach, and Raquel, and that was a big line for the Ducks. I mean, Sekach had that early goal, and then Raquel had that other snipe goal. I mean, both of those were good quality goals. I'm curious to see how that line's going to go forward. The lineups are out for tonight's game against the New York Rangers, and it looks like the lineup's going to be the same. The only difference is going to be Beleskey's going to draw out on the second line, and Edem's going to draw back in, and we'll talk more about that. But it looks like that's going to be the 4th line again tonight, and I'm curious to see how they do, Eddie.
Yeah, and the thing in that game that kind of surprised me was you look at the minutes played, and Fleischman, Sekach, and Raquel, barring Maroon, who played a couple seconds less than Raquel, played the least minutes of everybody in the Ducks lineup, and they were the reason we pretty much won that game with that line getting the first goal, and then Raquel and Sekach getting the game tying goal. I'm surprised they played so few minutes, but that's what we're talking about. They're an impact line. They're that energy line that we talked about with Kessler and Getzlaf. Maybe that Kessler line was gonna take the pressure off Getzlaf so we can put them out, and now that line is going out there, and after they're tiring out from a Getzlaf shift or a forechecking shift with Kessler's line, you throw out this young line, and their creativity and their speed is just too much for teams to handle.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a key, having those third and fourth energy lines like you talked about, going into the playoffs, and we'll get into more depth. We have a lot of questions about the lineups and who's where and why and what's going on. I think that line, did what they needed to do in the short time that they were out there. And, fortunately, Perry got that breakaway and was able to put that one over Varlamov's glove, high side there. Only thing with Perry that concerns me, and a lot of people talk about it too, is that he's been kind of quiet lately. So I'm hoping that goal kind of catapults him here, Eddie, in the final stretch for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think we all hope that. He had 5 shots. He was leading the team with Raquel and shots on the night, and we're used to him just streaking at this time of year. You remember his 50-goal season where he was scoring almost every night, and it's obviously nice to see him get that, and hopefully that raises his confidence. But you can't be too harsh on him. I think every player is going to struggle, and maybe his performances haven't been up to his the level we expect of him. But he's going to get back into it. And he's going to be always one of our key players. And I think 99% of the time, if a player's got a breakaway like that, who do you think we're going to pick on the Ducks? And 99% of the time, I'm going to pick Corey Perry for that.
Right, and I think we discussed this too. The only other second option would be Silverberg, obviously, with his insane shootout record. I think number 1 and 2 would have to definitely be Perry and Silverberg. Don't you agree, Eddie?
Yeah, that's for sure. And, to wrap up this game a bit too, an overall good effort from the Ducks, I think. Quality, close in the face-offs, close in hits. Against a pretty good Colorado team. You got to remember that this team was one of the best teams in the Western Conference last year. They've had their struggles this year. Varlamov kept them in the game, this game, but they're going to be back next year. They've got McKinnon and Duchesne and Landeskog, who it's as pesky as he was in this game against the Ducks. Really reminds me of Corey Perry in a way, big physical guy, but can show elite offensive talent sometimes. So they're going to be a good team, come next season.
Oh, yeah, you can't count out Colorado next year. I mean, this year they're probably not going to make it, most likely. But like you said, Varlamov's going to be solid in the net, and they're going to get some healthy guys back. So they're going to be a force next year. And speaking of in the net, we had a poll question last night, put it out there about Gibson and Andersen. There's been a lot of talk from the fans, especially after Gibson started 4 straight games. People going, hey, what about Andersen? Why aren't we playing him? He comes and plays well. We get the win in Colorado. We also got the word that he's going to start tonight against the Rangers. It looks like most of the fans, about 40-something% in our poll question, are leaning towards Andersen to be the starter for the playoffs. And then we had just under 30% saying to go with the hot hand. And what do you think, Eddie? We're getting close to the end of the season here. We had a goalie problem last year in the playoffs. We had Hiller, Andersen, and Gibson all play. What do you think going forward right now?
I think if they both continue to play pretty well by the end of the season, I think you have to go with Freddie, and just based on the amount of work he's done. Gibson started 18 games and Freddie started 47 so far. You expect the guy who's led you through most of the season, no matter how they're playing, unless Freddie gets on a streak right now and plays pretty bad in his last few games, and Gibson continues to play well. You could see, we could all see Boudreau playing the hot hand. He's done it before. He did it last season with Hiller struggling. He played Freddie and Gibson in the playoffs. So you could expect anything, but I think right now, if they continue to play well, Freddie's got to be the guy that starts. Their numbers are pretty similar. Freddie's the one with 31 wins on the season. You would expect him to play, but I wouldn't be surprised. This game tonight against the Rangers is going to be a big game for him, and with 9 games to go, if he struggles in this game and then Gibson gets the next start and gets on a roll, and Freddie gets a couple limited chances and doesn't wow them, I could easily see Gibson getting a start in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, Freddie's gotten, 31 of the wins for the Ducks. And the only reason why he, got off a little bit was that unfortunate incident, in Tampa Bay with the crossbar. So everybody knows that I lean a little bit, personal preference more towards Gibson. But I agree. I think with you and the fans, we got to roll with Andersen right now. He's the one that's got us there. He was the number one goalie. By no fault of his own to, get that incident to happen. So I think he can roll the next few games. We've got some big games coming up, Columbus and Boston coming up here after this. And I think you put him in there and let him get on track and stay on track. You still got to throw Gibson in there too. You can't just say, oh, bye-bye Gibson. He's got to play a few of these games down the stretch too. But I don't want a situation like last year where we were playing with all these goalies and rotate them all around because the goalies, they need to know their situation. I've talked to a couple of people that have played goalie, and the biggest thing for them, Eddie, is, it's a mental game. I mean, everything's physical, obviously, but mentally it's huge. You don't want 2 goalies not knowing who's starting and who's going to be the backup. They want to know what their roles are, and I think either one of them will accept being first or second. I mean, obviously they both want to be first, and they're both competitive. I just heard a quote on Andersen talking about how he wants to make the decision for Bruce difficult. He wants to compete. He wants to be in there just as much as Gibson does, and of course we don't doubt that at all. So I think the key is in the next week and a half is Bruce makes that decision. They both know where they're at, and I think from then on we'll be fine.
Yeah, and it's also not a bad situation to have either. When you have 2 goalies at the level these guys are playing, and if they're both playing good, it's not a terrible decision to have to pick who's harder to go and play in the playoffs. But I think we'll be all right going in. But like you said, you want to have the guy wants to know that he's going to be the guy you're going to ride to at the playoffs, and I think the play in these last 9 games is going to dictate that. But think I think you just have to go based on the amount of work Freddie has done for this team this season. I think right now the starting job in the playoffs is his to lose.
I agree. I think that's the situation it's in right now, and I hope he takes it to the Rangers tonight, which isn't going to be an easy one. It's going to be a tough game. We'll get to that in a minute. Some of the other questions that have been out there about the lineups and whatnot. The Ducks are almost 100% healthy. Jackman's the only one really sitting out. He's still going to be out for a couple more weeks. But with Beleskey back, we found out today that he's going to be out and Edam's going to be back in. We've also seen Bruce move Fleshman and Maroon in and out as well, and also scratched Sekach too as well for a game. So there's a lot of that going on, but to shed some light on that, I think that the whole process is really just the matchups, Eddie. If you notice, Bruce went with the bigger players against the Kings, and then he went with more of the speed against Colorado.
Yeah, and you see him put the speed in again tonight against one of the fastest, if not the fastest team in the NHL, and the Rangers. And you see Edam checking for Beleskey, which is a big boost to speed on, in the line. And then you see Stoner come in, which definitely isn't a speed upgrade on Dupre, but it's a nice solid defense first guy back there. Not to say Dupre hasn't been good. I'd actually rather Dupre play than Stoner, but I get his reasoning in this. Dupre pinches up. He's more of a two-way guy. He pinches up a little bit more than Stoner, and I think he wants that bigger guy who's going to hold the line and counteract the speed that the Rangers have and that they're going to use in the game tonight.
Yeah, I think that's what his thinking is too. And I know a lot of people are kind of like, "What's the deal with the Stoner thing?" But I think that's what he's going with is the matchups, and I think that's what we're going to see really going on from these last few weeks of the season and the playoffs. It's not a bad thing, to have 1 or 2 extra forwards or 1 or 2 extra defensive men. We've seen our fair share of injuries and games, man games lost. Knock on wood, we stayed good the rest of the way. But I think that's the best way to approach it. I know the fans are getting frustrated with the lineups and whatnot. I'm hoping that fourth line, stays intact like they did against Colorado tonight. And maybe it's just a one-for-one swap here and there because the lineup tonight is basically identical to Friday's. The only difference is Edom is in for Beleskey. And hopefully we just get that ironed out, and we should be good with the top lines going forward. I mean, we just got to, either put Maroon up there, Beleskey, or whoever they're going to decide, get them on the left wing up there on the top spot with the Twins. And I think we'll be good from then on out, Eddie.
Yeah, and with the main games lost, I think it's a testament to the depth the Ducks have and the quality of players they have at every position. You look at a team like Columbus, who is right up there with losing man games to injuries, and look how they've fallen this season. Not to say they're at the same level the Ducks are. Obviously, they don't have the star quality players we have in Getzlaf and Perry, but their injuries have crippled them and basically cost them a spot in the playoffs this season. And that speaks to volumes to the depth that the Ducks have, and with so many injuries, they're able to slot players in who are able to play a part and keep the team winning. So it's definitely, we'd all like to see Bruce play the same lineup, constantly, but sometimes you got to put a guy in for matchup, and if you've got that depth, why not use it?
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we're going to see tonight. Like you said, trying to match up with the speed. Tonight's game is not going to be an easy one. I don't think it will be as difficult as when we played them before. We lost that first game 4-1. Brizgalov was in net. I'm not even going to go there on that topic, but we lost that one. But I think this one's going to be a lot closer. It's going to be a tight, probably a 2-1 type of game. The Rangers' defense has been really well, despite Lundqvist being out, Eddie.
Yeah, and you can speak volumes to the defense, but the guy who's really carrying them right now is Cam Talbot, and his numbers right now are just amazing. He's 18, 7 and 4. Since having to take over for Lundqvist because of the injury, and his numbers are right on par with Lundqvist. He's got a .928 save percentage and a 2.14 goals against average, so he's really helped them. He's come up and played amazing for them, similar to how Andrew Hammond has done for Ottawa, but in a much different situation. I don't think anybody expected Cam Talbot. He has to come in and replace one of the best goalies in the league, and he's done it flawlessly for them. And with the additions of Yandel and on their blue line, it's just made them one of the best teams, if not the best team in the Eastern Conference of the NHL. And they can score goals. Rick Nash, Marty St. Louis is not in the lineup right now. Kreider, they've got a really good, young, fast team, and there's not many flaws in their game.
Yeah, and we talked about the President's Trophy last podcast, and we're in that race right now with Montreal tied for the points. But we've played the same amount of games as Montreal. New York has played 3 less games and is 2 points behind us, so you can't count them out in this either. And like we said the last time, we're not too concerned about the President's Trophy, but it is nice if you're able to win it, because then you do get home ice all the way through, even to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, and this could very well be a Stanley Cup final, preview. And this is, just because we're not in the same conference, this is a big game. They're a good team. We're a good team, and I want to win this game. You want to win as many games as you can. You want to beat the best teams in the league, and I think this is a big statement if we can come in and play a solid game. Gotta lock down the second period against this team. And I think forechecking hard on this team. They're going to be a fast team, and keep them in their own zone and tire them out, and hopefully slow them down and come the third period and jump on them when we have the scoring chances.
Yeah, and that's going to be important tonight, especially because they played last night, and not only did they play, they went all the way to a shootout against the Hurricanes. So they may be a little bit tired. I mean, these guys are athletes and they know what they're doing, but when you play that kind of a game and then you got to play another, back-to-back game right after that, it's a little bit tough. So I'm hoping that the Ducks do, get an early lead and can tire them out going into this one, Eddie. And, after this game, we then switch gears and go over to Columbus to play a totally different team, a team that's looking on the outside of the playoffs. They're not going to make it this year, but they always play the Ducks tough. And, I'm sure they'll be up and ready to go, especially with Wisniewski playing against his former club.
Yeah, Ben. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll get to see William Karlsson play. I'm not sure if he's broke their lineup yet. I haven't really followed the Blue Jackets much at all this season. Obviously they were a great story last year, making the playoffs, and taking the Pittsburgh Penguins pretty far, and then we see them this year, struggling. They've had a lot of injuries, we're privy to that. We've seen our fair share of injuries this season too. But they're still a good team. They've won three in a row as of late. They've had some really good players step up. Marco Dano recently has been amazing for them. Ryan Johansson's been a stud all season, along with Nick Foligno, and they've got some other young guys in Ryan Murray and Alex Wenberg, who are some really good players. And they've got a good team, and obviously Sergei Bobrovsky in net is always he's a Vezina winning goaltender. It's always it's always going to be a tough game when he's in net. But I think we should look back at the last game we played against them. We beat them 4-1. Gibson played that game, so we'll have to see who gets to start in this game after the Rangers game. But I think it's going to be a game that we should be winning, and hopefully we coming off a win against the Rangers and we can continue the streak against them.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we should. I mean, they do have a balanced attack. They've got six guys in double digits in goals. So, I mean, this game could be a little bit more of a high scoring one. You just don't know. I mean, they've played us tough, and they're a physical team, and you don't want to count anybody out. But like you said, Eddie, this is one that we should win, and hopefully, we get the win over New York, and then we carry the momentum into Columbus, and don't let down against these guys.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see Wisniewski play back in Columbus so early. Things just kind of work themselves out. That we don't play Columbus often, but you get to go back to Columbus, and Wisniewski gets to go back to the team he's played with for the last few seasons. And yeah, it'll be a fun game to watch. I think they're a physical team, and you might see a guy like Beleskey check back in for this game, and possibly Dupre, or they might keep Stoner in. They're a pretty big team. Johansson's, Hartnell, Johnson, but they've got Dubinsky. They've got a big a bit of a mix though. They've got Atkinson in there as well, Marco Dano. These guys are pretty small, and then they've got some really big guys too, some physical guys. So it's going to be a pretty fun game to watch. I think it's more surprising than anything that the people wouldn't think that Columbus is going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, and then after we take on the Blue Jackets, we go to take on Boston, who they've found themselves in a much different situation this year. Last year they beat us out for the President's Trophy by a point, and this year they're struggling, to try and make it in the playoffs. They're battling it out with Washington for that, wild card spot, and Ottawa's on their heels too, and it's going to be a close game. I mean, we managed to beat them earlier in the season in a tight one, but Tuukka Rask and the rest of the team is going to be a task for the Ducks to go for.
Yeah, and obviously we haven't. They're not the Bruins. We haven't seen them play like they did last year. They're not the same team, and a little bit younger this year, a little bit older as well with Zdeno Chara. And we've seen him struggle a lot this season, and some guys have stepped up, and Spooner and Riley Smith and Pasternak, but they're not the same team. They're struggling and fighting for a spot. So in that sense, it's going to be a hard game. Any team battling for a playoff spot is going to be a hard game to play. But yeah, they're not the same team. Obviously, Krejci's been hurt and forced Bergeron into a first line center role, which he's not really accompanied with. He's more of a second line guy, and they're just kind of missing that one fast guy who can score you a lot of points. And the irony of it is they had that guy and traded him away to Dallas and Tyler Seguin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, they're just missing some pieces there. I mean, not to say that they can't go far in the playoffs, but I mean, with the way the other teams have been playing, New York, Montreal, and the Islanders too, who we're going to face them on Saturday. It's going to be tough for them going forward, in these final weeks. They probably make the playoffs, but I don't see them going too far, Eddie.
Yeah, but you never know. The East right now is pretty wide open, and if Krejci comes back and Chara and Co pick up their play, Rask is a great goaltender. You can see them making a run possibly, but they're fighting right now. Ottawa, with a game in hand, is only 1 point behind them, so Ottawa wins their next game, they're out of the playoffs, and they're fighting for that 8th spot. The top 7 spots are pretty much locked up, so it's they'll be fighting with Ottawa and Florida, so it's gonna be a tough game in that sense.
Definitely. And another tough game will be against the Islanders as well. We're going to be facing them. It's going to be an early game on Saturday for us on the West Coast. It's going to be actually a 10 o'clock game, our time, Pacific time. So it's going to be a battle in this one. The Islanders have played well. They've cooled off a little bit lately, but they have several guys that can score on their team, from Tavares all the way down, Eddie.
Yeah, they've got some great depth on their team. They've had some young guys step up, and some, two great defensive acquisitions in Boychuk and Leddy have really, you know, bolstered their defense core, and helped them become, a beast in the East. And I think a big surprise for everybody this season, Halak has really carried them. He set a franchise record in wins, and you look at some of the teams they've had in their history, and he sets a franchise record for wins with that team is pretty amazing for him. And obviously John Tavares is right near the top with Crosby and Backstrom and Ovechkin for the Hart Trophy in the Art Ross race. So it's going to be a tough game, probably one of the toughest of the week right after the Rangers game. And it's a home game for the Islanders, and one of the last, probably the last game for the Ducks at Nassau Coliseum. But it's going to be an important game for the Islanders, important game for the Ducks, and it's going to be tough to beat a guy like John Tavares.
Yeah, I think that one's going to be another close game as well. I mean, I think this one is maybe it could be a little bit more high scoring like we played last time. Had a lot of back and forth action. So this one may be a lot of more offense than defense. Maybe a 3-2, 4-3 type of battle in this game. But definitely a winnable game for the Ducks. Going on this road trip. We said that last week. We ended up winning all of them. So out of these four, I mean, I don't want to say that the Ducks are going to win all four, because I don't want to predict that and then they don't. But I definitely think the Ducks can at least win 2 or 3 of these next 4 games.
Yeah. I think realistically, the two middle games against Columbus and Boston, we should be winning. Even with Boston fighting for a playoff spot, I think we match up pretty well against them, and they're not as good as they used to be, like we said. And we got to face Tuukka Rask. It won't be as easy, but he hasn't been as good this season, so it won't be too bad. And then the Islanders game on Saturday, the Islanders have to play Detroit on Sunday, which is, in the standings wise, is a little bit more of an important game for them. So we might see a backup goalie against the Islanders. So I think barring the Rangers game, these next 3 games we should be winning.
I agree, Eddie. And some other recent news for the Ducks lately. Chris Wagner was recalled today. We found out Dan Wood put that out on Twitter, and some of us asked him some questions about injuries, and there was no updated injuries or anything like that. He was just added for insurance. So that's a good thing to, because some people like myself, we were going, well, wait a second, you're bringing him up, someone hurt, and there's nothing going on. It's just added for a roster spot, so that's some good news there. And then we also signed Montour to an entry-level deal, Eddie.
Yeah, but he was drafted in the second round by us last year, and he's a right-handed shot, power play quarterback, offensive defenseman. Played with the Waterloo Blackhawks in the United States Hockey League this year, as well as UMass in the NCAA. And he's a pretty good prospect. Right shot, power play quarterback. We got that in Vatanen a bit this year too, but it's always nice to pilot prospects, especially right-handed shot defensemen. It's always great to have those guys in there, and it'll be interesting to see how this guy develops. It's going to be hard for him to break in the lineup in the next few years, and he's 20 years old, so he's still got time. But we got, like I said, Vatanen and now Wisniewski locked up for a couple of years, and with Manson probably going to break in because he's more of a defensive guy. If Boschman leaves, then Montour is kind of on the outside looking in, especially with a guy like Shea Theodore almost ready to come into the lineup.
Yeah, I agree, Eddie. I mean, definitely a good prospect, but it may take some time for him. We may not see him next season, maybe, 2 seasons out, or maybe we only see him for a game or 2 next year. But definitely a good move for the Ducks. And, shifting some gears, too, there's some news in the NHL. The GMs got together and talked about some rule changes. Talk about the 2 big rule changes, Eddie, that the league's looking at.
Yeah, and there's really 2 big ones that they've talked about in Boca Raton for the GM meetings this year, and there was the introduction of 3-on-3 overtime after 4-on-4. Different formats have been discussed, but the one I've heard more often is about 4 minutes of 4-on-4. Then they would blow the whistle or blow the play dead, switch to 3-on-3 overtime, and then if the game is still tied, go to a shootout. And it's really just to limit the amount of shootouts. The league would like to see the game end, more games end in overtime, and also just to increase points scoring, like point tallies. This might be one of the first seasons we'll probably see a guy not reach 100 points, and if you introduce 3-on-3, you'll definitely see more games end before the shootout. And they've introduced it in the AHL this year, and they're about, I believe, 14% of games in the NHL this year have gone to a shootout, and in the AHL it's only about I believe 4%. So it's a big decrease when you put in 3-on-3. So it'll be interesting to see how they work that in.
Yeah, I agree, Eddie. I mean, if you got 3-on-3, there's a lot more opportunities for 2-on-1s and 3-on-2s and breakaways and all kinds of odd man rushes. It just takes one player getting wiped out or a hard check, and then the other team's going the other way. So I think it's a good thing. I mean, I like the shootouts, but I think some of the fans have kind of gotten a little bit tired of them. Especially us when we were having such a bad time with them for a little while last season. But I think it's a good shift, and I think it'll be better. You'll get more regulation and overtime victories as well. That's that statistic. Some people had asked me this week what the ROW stands for, and that's regulation and overtime wins, which is kind of key because when you get down to a tiebreak situation, which the Ducks may do for the President's Trophy, it's going to give you that edge.
Yeah, and the only issue though with the 3-on-3 that I've heard is a lot of people have to who's gonna play really on that 3-on-3, and it's obviously gonna be the stars. Like for us, it's gonna be Getzlaf, Perry, and probably Lindholm or Vatanen, and then for example, Pittsburgh is gonna play Crosby, Malkin, Letang. It's gonna add more minutes to these guys, these elite players' play time. That comes into contract discussions, players' health, player safety. There's a lot of issues to iron out before this becomes a thing, but I think it's a good thing. I like the shootout, but 3-on-3 hockey is good hockey no matter what, so it'll be good to see that get in. And the other rule that's really been discussed so far at the meetings that I've heard is the introduction of a coach's challenge, which is similar to football, except I don't believe they're going to be throwing flags on the ice for hockey, but it's going to be similar to how a timeout is called. If for like an offside was discussed today, or if a goalie interference call, and they want to review to see if if they disallow a goal for goalie interference, the coach could call a coach's challenge. They could review the play. And if it gets overturned, then it's a goal, and it's plays that are non-reviewable right now. I think it'll be a good thing for the game to get the calls right.
Yeah, I agree, Eddie. I think we noticed that in the playoffs last year, especially the Rangers getting the short end of the stick on a couple of interference plays in the Stanley Cup final, and not just that series, but there was other series. Even when the Ducks were out, I still watch a lot of the other games and check out what's going on and see who's doing what. And I think it would benefit. I mean, it may take a couple extra minutes to get it ironed out, but I mean, especially if it's a goal late in the third period that can be a winning goal or a tying goal, and determine the outcome of a game. I think it's important to get it right because we've seen situations where a goal went in and it shouldn't have, and we've seen it the other way too. So I'm kind of glad that they're looking at this, even on the offsides too. There were some offsides plays where certain players scored on certain teams, and I think that'll kind of get that all straightened out a little bit better.
Yeah, and we saw an example of it in we talked about it a bit in the LA game, if Silverberg and Thompson were in front of the net, and Quick felt that he was interfered with. Sutter could have easily, if that rule was implemented this year, or this was that time next year, Sutter could have used his coach's challenge, reviewed the play, and possibly got the play overturned. And the other thing about it too is you can't just throw it out and have no consequences if you're wrong. If you throw it out and the play isn't overturned, you lose a coach's challenge. You also lose your timeout as a consequence. So I think adding that in there too is a good idea. So you can't just throw out a coach's challenge whenever you want, just to kind of either delay the game for a free timeout or waste your coach's challenge.
Yeah, there has to be a limit on it too. You can't just be challenging everything left and right as well. That wouldn't make sense. There'd be way too many delays in the game, and we'd all get upset about that. So I think if they have that limited like that, and the consequence of the timeout, I think that's an appropriate way to address it. So I'm hoping they get that done. Just some other couple updates here on the blog for everybody. We went over 10,000 followers this past week, counting everything on social media, and we went over 7,000 actually today on Twitter. So I just want to tell everybody thank you, and we appreciate all the support from everybody. This came from just making some hockey shirts, as I'd said from before, and then going into the blog, and then obviously Eddy here came up with the podcast idea. So I'm glad that Eddy came with me with the idea, and I'm glad everybody likes it and is listening, and we're going to keep going forward, and the writers are helping out as well, and it's been a good year, Eddy. It's been crazy, but it's been good.
Yeah, it's a lot better doing the podcast now than it was doing in the off season when we pretty much talked about the same thing over and over. But yeah, like you said, I remember coming to the blog and in the beginning just looking for somewhere to just kind of write, and then I saw, I listened to a lot of podcasts on my own before, and then I thought, why not do it? I haven't seen any podcasts for the Ducks. I remember looking out and not finding any, and then I thought, why not do it with the site that I'm writing for, and it's kind of just blown up into a whole thing now, and we're still working to do the live stream thing we've talked about lately, and there's a lot of other things coming up in the next few weeks that we're going to try and work on, and we'll just basically keep you guys updated on any ongoings with the podcast in the next few ones coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and don't forget, we still have 2 contests too. We have the 2 tickets we're giving away to social media night when the Ducks play the Oilers. That one's a simple contest. You just take a photo wearing any Ducks and Pucks shirt. Try to keep it clean and PG. That's what we try to do. I mean, but it still can be funny, hockey related, and whichever one is the most creative, you just you'll be the one that'll win and get the tickets. All you got to do is tag us on Twitter, Instagram, and put the photo up on there, and then we'll look at them at the end of the month, and whoever's the funniest, greatest one will send out 2 tickets to you. And then we also still have our phrase game, which we did for the opening of the season. Now we're doing for the fan appreciation night. We had 2 words that we had given out in the previous podcast. If you had missed them, go back and listen towards the end of those 2. We gave out the first 2 words. Tonight, the 3rd word will be we, W-E, and we'll be giving out the 4th word on the next podcast coming up here. And once that one's done, once you think you know the phrase, just send us an email at DucksNPucks@usa.com. And what we'll do is we'll pick a random winner out of that group, and that person will get 2 tickets to that night. So some good stuff coming up. Like Eddy said, we'll keep you guys updated. Have another podcast next week. And thanks for listening, and let's go Ducks.